There's a $30 backpack that could break the Nancy Guthrie case. Investigators are tracing a Walmart paper trail to find a killer. When they pulled the forensic data from that grainy nest footage, they weren't looking for a high-end tactical bag from a specialty outdoor shop. They were looking at a 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack. To a casual observer, it's just a cheap, black backpack you'd see on any hiking trail in Arizona. But to a federal investigator, that logo is a homing beacon. Ozark Trail isn't a national brand like North Face or Patagonia that you can find in 100 different department stores. It's a Walmart private label. You don't buy this at REI or a local mom and pop shop. You buy it at Walmart, or you don't buy it new at all. The suspect likely chose it because it's anonymous and generic, the kind of thing that blends into a crowd. But in his attempt to stay invisible, he actually handed the FBI a direct map to a single retailer's corporate database. By opting for the most common gear available, he narrowed the search for every outdoor enthusiast in the country to a specific list of customers. He picked the most common bag in America, not realizing it was the only one that came with a digital receipt. When the FBI contacted Walmart's corporate security, they weren't just asking for general sales figures. They were initiating SKU-level warfare. In modern retail, every item has a stock-keeping unit, a digital bath certificate that tracks its journey from the warehouse to the register. The FBI isn't hunting for a bag. They're pinpointing the exact timestamp and register where that specific 25-liter hiker pack was scanned. The suspect's plan to stay off the radar by buying cheap gear backfires here. Most $30 transactions at a big box retailer leave a permanent digital footprint. Between credit cards, debit cards, Walmart payment, and loyalty apps, almost every transaction is tethered to a digital identity. If the suspect used a card, his name is already on a federal spreadsheet. Even if he used store credit, there's a trail leading back to a previous return or a gift card purchase. The FBI is literally auditing the paper trail of a $30 piece of polyester to find a kidnapper. It's a level of forensic scrutiny he clearly didn't anticipate. In a federal investigation, your pocket change leaves a louder trail than your footsteps. If the suspect was smart enough to use cash, he still wasn't smart enough to bypass the lens. Staying off the grid with a cash payment only works if you can avoid the high-definition cameras staring at you from every register, entrance, and parking lot pole. Federal agents are now visually auditing every person who stood at those registers, matching physical builds to the timestamps on the sales receipts. They want to see the face, the build, and the vehicle of the person who walked out of that store with an Ozark Trail pack in the weeks leading up to February 1st. It's a grueling, unglamorous process of elimination. While the suspect was busy masking his face on Nancy's porch, he likely stood in a brightly lit checkout lane with his guard down, thinking he was just another customer buying hiking gear. He spent 40 minutes blinding Nancy's home security, but he couldn't blind the global security network of the world's largest retailer. He hid his face on Nancy's porch, but he probably showed it to a checkout clerk 3 weeks ago. Sheriff Nanos recently dropped a bombshell that shifted the entire investigative calculus. The backpack might not have come from a Walmart shelf. If the suspect bought that Ozark Trail bag secondhand on eBay or Facebook Marketplace, the retail SKU trail goes cold instantly. There's no corporate transaction log for a $20 cash swap in a parking lot. But while a garage sale might stay off the books, the digital secondary market is its own forensic trap. Every "is this still available" message and every PayPal notification is a permanent record. The FBI has spent days serving subpoenas to platforms like OfferUp and Craigslist, looking for any local listing of that specific black hiker pack in the months leading up to the abduction. They aren't just looking for the buyer. They're looking for the seller who remembers a guy showing up to buy a cheap bag with no questions asked. Even a private sale leaves a shipping address or a GPS-tagged message trail that can't be deleted. A garage sale might stay off the books, but a Facebook message is a permanent confession. Forensic analysis of the porch footage revealed a glaring mismatch that tells us everything about who this man is. He was carrying a semi-automatic handgun, but it was shoved into a cheap polyester holster designed specifically for a revolver. To an average viewer, it's just a gun on a belt. To a professional, it's a neon sign screaming amateur. This is the hallmark of a civilian who built his tactical kit by wandering through a sporting goods aisle or a clearance bin. A trained operator, whether military, police, or even a professional hitman, knows that using the wrong holster is a receipt for a jammed draw or a dropped weapon. It proves the suspect didn't have tactical training. He had a budget. He likely grabbed the first black holster that he saw that looked close enough and assumed it would work. It's another piece of the profile, a man who studied for the crime, but didn't actually understand the gear he was carrying. He carried a professional weapon in a clearance rack holster, the first sign that his plan was built on a budget. In the early days of the search, investigators thought they had the mic drop piece of evidence. A single black glove was recovered just 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home, matching the one seen in the nest footage. DNA testing was rushed through a private lab, and for a moment, the world waited for a name to pop up in the CODIS database. But the breakthrough was a ghost. The DNA came back as a mixed profile that eventually traced back to a local restaurant worker who had absolutely nothing to do with the case. It was a crushing blow for the Pima County Sheriff's Department, but it highlights just how desperate the search has become. Investigators are chasing every scrap of black fabric and every discarded piece of trash in a 2-mile radius, hoping for a miracle. It proves that despite the suspect's amateur gear, he was either extraordinarily lucky or disciplined enough to take his trash with him. $1 million lead evaporated in a lab, proving the suspect didn't leave behind a single easy answer. While the suspect was busy scrubbing his digital footprint and ditching his burner phones, he forgot about the one piece of technology he couldn't touch. Nancy Guthrie relies on a pacemaker, a device that does more than just regulate a heartbeat. It broadcasts one. These medical implants emit low-frequency wireless signals so doctors can monitor patient data remotely. In a desperate high-tech gamble, the FBI deployed helicopters equipped with specialized signal sniffers to fly low and slow over the Tucson metropolitan area. They weren't looking for a person. They were pinging the atmosphere for a very specific electronic signature. If Nancy is alive and within range, her own heart is essentially acting as a forensic beacon that no amateur kidnapper has the tools to jam. It's a level of electronic surveillance that turns the entire city into a grid search for a single, pulsing frequency. The suspect might have been smart enough to cut the Nest cameras at 1:47 a.m., but he couldn't silence the digital heartbeat hidden inside his victim. This profile of a prepared amateur gained even more traction when investigators discovered a masked figure was spotted near Nancy's home on January 11th. Profilers call this a trial run, a risky reconnaissance mission weeks before the abduction. He wasn't just lucky on February 1st, he was practicing his mistakes. When Sheriff Chris Nano stepped in front of the cameras recently, he didn't say the investigation was close. He said investigators were definitely closer. In the world of high-profile forensics, that distinction is everything. Close is a hopeful guess. Closer is a comparative statement that implies a gap is being narrowed. It's the specific language law enforcement uses when they have moved from a list of 1,000 names down to a handful of primary targets. This is how a department speaks when they're likely staring at a driver's license photo and a Walmart surveillance still, waiting for that final DNA lab result or subpoena return to make the case prosecutable. They're building the cage. For a suspect who thought a $30 backpack and a ski mask made him a ghost, the math has officially run out. The FBI doesn't say closer unless they're looking at a photo of the man they intend to arrest. If the FBI is already closer to a name on a store receipt, how much longer does the suspect really think he can stay a ghost? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below.